Hello there. I hope this documentary proposal finds you well, and I hope you consider the ideas for this documentary film. So, Star Wars, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, movie franchise of all time. And so, when you think about it, it had to have gone through a lot of revisions, and they did. And the original ideas that George Lucas had when creating the first Star Wars movie or sets of first Star Wars movies, they do differ significantly with the finished product that millions and millions of viewers saw back in the early 70s, late 70s, early 80s. So, for this documentary, I would like to explore the what if of Star Wars. I want to explore what would have happened if these original ideas and concepts made it into the finished product of Star Wars, or as George Lucas called it, the Star Wars. And so I would like to explore that. And also, I would love to explore George Lucas's ideas for the story that comes after the original trilogy. So after, spoiler alert, after the Emperor and Darth Vader are dead and Luke Skywalker is the next new line of Jedi, George Lucas came up with ideas for the story after this. So a whole nother trilogy to explore with these characters. And that they did happen, but Disney bought the license for Star Wars a few years ago, and with that, George Lucas's ideas for the sequel trilogy, while somewhat met in Disney's version, are not completely aligned with what he wanted to do with his characters and with the story of Star Wars going forward after Return of the Jedi. So I would like to explore those two avenues in with with the Star Wars story, because it's interesting to realize and know what would have happened if George Lucas went ahead and made the original Star Wars trilogy the way he originally intended it to be, or how he would have made his sequel trilogy. So the working title for this film is There Is Another, The Tale of the Star Wars. And the reason I call it There Is Another is a reference to what Yoda said during The Empire Strikes Back when he was talking to the Force Ghost of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan told Yoda that boy is our last hope, referring to, of course, Luke Skywalker, the main hero of the original trilogy. And then Yoda ominously says, "No, there is another," which at the time people didn't know what that meant, but now we know that he was referring to Luke's twin sister, Leia. So this would be the other Star Wars story, basically. It's kind of like a little play with that idea and concept. So that's why I named it that title. So the main areas for filming I would like to do are the Skywalker Ranch, mainly because George Lucas comes up with his movie ideas there, and he also has a movie theater there. When he's finished with filming his movie, he reviews it there and writes the scripts for more movies. So that's a significant area. I would like to go to Lucasfilm HQ, which is named after George Lucas himself, where where a lot of these special effects for not just Star Wars movies, but any movie under the Lucasfilm imprint are made, special effects stuff. So that's a significant area. And I would also like to film on the Walt Disney Productions building, because since now Disney owns the rights to Star Wars, I would like to shoot there and see what the people at Disney are doing with the Star Wars brand right now. So the reason I want to make this documentary is because Star Wars right at this moment is a very hot topic. Last year, the Skywalker saga concluded with the rise of Skywalker, and now The Mandalorian Season 2 is on Disney Plus, and that's a very popular TV show. So I think it's a good time to reminisce and explore what would have been if some ideas that George Lucas had were actually implemented into the finished product of Star Wars. It's a what if, it's a fun little what if of that would have been different than what we have today, that sort of thing. That's where my approach to this film is going. So, the list of subjects that I would like to interview are, of course, George Lucas, the man himself, Mark Hamill, some of the living cast of Star Wars, rest in peace, Carrie Fisher, and rest in peace, Peter Mayhew. And I would also like to interview Bob Iger because he is the chairman of Disney, and Disney owns the rest of Star Wars now. And Kathleen Kennedy, she is the president of Lucasfilm, so she oversees the production of all Star Wars like projects that are in the works currently in the pipeline, like past and future projects. So she would have a lot of information to her. And I would like to interview J.J. Abrams because he directed the first and last movies in the sequel trilogy, and his views of what George Lucas had in mind for the sequel trilogy is different than what J.J. Abrams had with his sequel trilogy, or his films that he made with the sequel trilogy. So that those people would be very interesting to interview and get to know their thoughts. So that would be really interesting. So the research outline. So I'm picking like mainly for the sake of the sequel trilogy. There's this giant freaking robot.com article and a Polygon article that explores George Lucas's plans for the sequel trilogy, like his original plans of what would have happened. Also, there's a YouTube channel called Mr. Sunday Videos, and they did a video exploring what would have happened with George Lucas's original ideas for the sequel trilogy if those were implemented, or if he still had the rights to Star Wars and made those new sequel trilogy. So, for archival footage and like background, for the first act, I would like to use a actual comic book series called The Star Wars, which was released in 2012 by Marvel, and basically it explores what George Lucas originally intended for the original trilogy, like so Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, and it explores what they would have looked like if George Lucas actually used those ideas in the film. And so there will be a nice little visual aspect to it because the artwork is pretty good, like it's very like striking, and it shows a very different galaxy far, far away than what we've been accustomed to. I would also like to use some footage from the Star Wars documentary called Empire of Dreams, which goes over the history of Star Wars and what it has become cultural wise and pop culture wise. And I would like to use some like footage from there, like backup reference, like some interviews with George Lucas that he did, and explaining some of the topics that we're actually going to explore in this film, such as his original ideas for the original trilogy. So I would mainly like to use a directed camera because like my intentions for this film are going to be like two different types of filming. So I would like to be a documentary-esque film in the first act exploring George Lucas's ideas for the original trilogy, but I want to also do something different for the second act, which explores the sequel trilogy. So what I have in mind for that is, since there's not a lot of images or concept art of what George Lucas had in mind for his sequel trilogy of Star Wars movies, I would like to get hired actors to recreate some of the things that George Lucas had in mind for the sequel trilogy, and like maybe get some like certain like fight scenes and stuff like that, lightsaber fights, which would be really interesting. I would like to explore that in a documentary series because I don't think that's really been done in any documentary, like extensive like combat, and especially of this high caliber with Star Wars. So for the music, I would like to, of course, use the John Williams music because his music is so iconic that it's amazing. I would like to would you like to use some interviews with George Lucas, Mark Hamill, Bob Iger, and Kathleen Kennedy for backup reference, as I mentioned before. And for my opening, I would actually like to play the footage for the Star Wars original movie trailer back in the 70s. And then at the end, where it shows the title for Star Wars, I would like it to be edited to say my title, which is There Is Another, the other Star Wars story. So that'll be really interesting. Yeah, so I hope you really like this idea. I hope you can come back and pick up my idea, and I hope to hear from you in the near future. So thank you, and as always, may the Force be with you. Bye bye. So the runtime for this film, I could definitely see it reaching at least 2 hours, to the most at 2.5 hours, because we are covering a lot of story and alternate takes on the Star Wars mythos and characters. So that would like be a very like extensive film, but I think it will be worth it in the